On a warm July night in 1969, millions of people around the world huddled around flickering TV sets. Black and white images of a man in a bulky white suit appeared on their screens. He slowly climbed down a ladder, stepped onto a dusty gray surface, and spoke words that would echo through history. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It was the most incredible event in modern history. Humans had landed on the moon. Or had they? Because not long after those famous images beamed into living rooms, whispers began. Whispers that grew into rumors. Rumors that turned into one of the biggest conspiracies of all time, that the moon landing never happened. And the footage we saw was staged right here on Earth. This is the story of how that idea started, why so many people believe it, and the strange clues they point to. But to get there, we need to go back to the 1960s, a time when the world was locked in a battle, not of armies, but of technology and pride. The 1960s was the height of the Cold War, a tense standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both countries were trying to outdo each other in everything: military power, nuclear weapons, and especially space exploration. In 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik, the first satellite to orbit the Earth. In 1961, they sent Yuri Gagarin into space, making him the first human to orbit the planet. The United States was embarrassed and desperate to catch up. So President John F. Kennedy made a bold promise. By the end of the decade, America would land a man on the moon and bring him back safely. It was an audacious goal, where the technology didn't even exist yet. Billions of dollars poured into NASA's Apollo program. Thousands of scientists and engineers worked around the clock. And in July 1969, Apollo 11 launched from Kennedy Space Center. But for some, the timing was suspicious. Could NASA really have developed such advanced technology in such a short time? Could they really pull off the most difficult mission in human history on the first try? That doubt planted the seeds for what came next. At first, the idea of a moon landing hoax was just a fringe thought, something only a few skeptics muttered about. But in 1976, a man named Bill Kaysing self-published a book called We Never Went to the Moon. Kaysing had worked for a company that built rocket engines for NASA, and he claimed to know inside information. In his book, he argued that NASA had faked the moon landing to beat the Soviets and maintain America's image as the world's leader in science and technology. His claims caught people's attention. After all, this wasn't just some random person. This was someone who had been close to the space industry. Then, in 1978, a documentary called Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon?, aired on television, bringing Kaysing's ideas to millions of viewers. Suddenly, the whispers turned into something much louder. The clues people point to this day, believers in the moon landing hoax point to a series of oddities in the Apollo footage and photos. One of the most famous clues is the American flag. In videos from the moon landing, the flag appears to ripple and wave, but there's no air on the moon. How could it move like that? Skeptics say it's proof the flag was filmed on Earth, where a breeze could blow it. NASA says the flag had a horizontal rod along the top, and the rippling effect came from how the astronauts twisted the pole when planting it. Another clue is the lack of stars in the sky. The moon has no atmosphere, so stars should shine even brighter than on Earth. Yet in Apollo photos, the sky behind the astronauts is pitch black. Believers say NASA forgot to add stars to their studio set. NASA explains that the camera settings were adjusted to capture the bright lunar surface and the astronauts' suits, which washed out the dimmer stars. Then there's the issue of shadows. In some photos, shadows of objects appear to go in different directions, as if there were multiple light sources, like in a movie studio. NASA insists it's an optical illusion caused by the uneven lunar ground and the sun's angle. And perhaps the biggest claim of all, the Van Allen radiation belts. These are zones of intense radiation that surround the Earth. Skeptics say no human could pass through them without deadly exposure. NASA says the Apollo spacecraft moved through the belts quickly, and shielding protected the astronauts. To believers, each of these clues adds up to something fishy. To NASA, they're misunderstandings of science, but the questions refuse to die. Why would NASA fake it? Believers argue that in 1969, the U.S. government was under intense pressure to beat the Soviets. Billions of dollars were on the line, and America's reputation as the leader of the free world was at stake. What if NASA couldn't pull it off? What if the technology wasn't ready? Failing in front of the entire planet would have been humiliating. So conspiracy theorists say NASA faked the footage to make it look like they had succeeded. Some even claim that legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, fresh off directing 2001, A Space Odyssey, helped stage the scenes in a secret studio. This part of the theory is so famous that Kubrick's name has become a meme in conspiracy circles. Of course, NASA has always denied this, and thousands of engineers, scientists, and astronauts would have had to keep the secret for decades. Could so many people stay silent? Believers argue that most workers only knew small parts of the project, not the full picture. Even now, more than 50 years later, polls show that millions of people around the world either believe or suspect the moon landing was faked. The theory has inspired books, documentaries, YouTube videos, and entire online communities dedicated to proving NASA lied. Part of its power comes from how easy it is to imagine. Governments have lied before. Powerful organizations do keep secrets. And the footage of the moon landing, with its grainy black and white images and eerie stillness, does look almost too perfect, like a movie set. It also doesn't help that no one has been back to the moon since 1972. For some, that feels suspicious. If it was so easy back then, why can't we do it now? NASA says it's a matter of funding and priorities, but for believers, it's more evidence that something's off. What we know. Most scientists, historians, and engineers say the evidence for the moon landing is overwhelming. We have the Apollo mission's telemetry data, thousands of photos, hundreds of pounds of moon rocks, and testimonies from the astronauts themselves. Independent observatories around the world tracked the missions in real time. Even the Soviets, who had every reason to expose a hoax, never did. But in the world of conspiracies, facts aren't always enough. For some, the very size of the Apollo program makes it more suspicious. For others, it's a symbol of mistrust in government, media, and authority. And so the moon landing hoax lives on. A story that refuses to fade, a riddle that keeps pulling people in generation after generation. Why this story still haunts us? There's something irresistible about the idea of a giant secret hiding in plain sight. The moon landing hoax is not just about space, it's about power, deception, and the human need to question what we're told, and whether you believe it or not. The theory, taps into a universal feeling that maybe the biggest events in history aren't what they seem. Maybe behind the curtain, someone else is pulling the strings. In the end, the moon landing hoax isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's a modern myth, a story about trust, doubt, and our place in the universe. And like all good myths, it's not going away anytime soon. So the next time you see those famous images of Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon, ask yourself, are you looking at history or at the greatest magic trick ever performed? As always, visit us at readtherealstory.com for more true crime tales, mysteries, and chilling stories you won't find anywhere else.